Today, we explore the life of a man who captured the hearts of millions, not just because of his famous last name, but because of his own magnetic presence, John F. Kennedy Jr. Known affectionately as John by the press, he was the child of America's most famous political dynasty. Born on November 25, 1960, in Washington, D.C., his very existence symbolized the hope of a new generation. His father, President John F. Kennedy, was the youthful leader who embodied the promise of Camelot. His mother, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, was an icon of grace and elegance. From the moment he was born, John Jr. lived in the blinding spotlight of history. But with that spotlight came tragedy. In 1963, when John was just 3 years old, his father was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. The world remembers the haunting image of young John saluting his father's casket on his 3rd birthday. That moment turned him into a symbol of innocence and loss, etched forever in the American memory. Growing up without his father, John and his sister Caroline were raised largely by Jacqueline Kennedy. Determined to protect her children, Jackie tried to give them as normal a childhood as possible, despite the relentless media attention. Even so, John's life was anything but ordinary. Everywhere he went, he carried the weight of a legacy that belonged not only to his family, but to the entire nation. As John grew older, the world watched with fascination. Handsome, athletic, and endlessly charismatic, he was often described as the most eligible bachelor in America. He had an adventurous streak, enjoying sailing, skiing, and acting in school plays. At one point, he even dabbled in theater and was rumored to be interested in Hollywood. But the pull of public service and the Kennedy expectation of leadership was never far away. John attended Brown University, graduating in 1983 with a degree in American Studies. He later pursued law at New York University School of Law, earning his degree in 1989. Passing the New York bar exam wasn't easy for him. He famously failed twice before succeeding on the 3rd try. But that struggle humanized him, making him relatable in a way that few Kennedys had ever been. He later worked briefly as a prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, showing that he wanted to serve not just as a Kennedy, but as his own man. Still, John wasn't satisfied with the courtroom. His vision was bigger, more creative. In 1995, he co-founded George Magazine, an innovative publication that combined politics with celebrity and lifestyle. Its tagline was, "Not just politics as usual." Through George, John tried to make politics accessible to a generation that had grown cynical. Cover stories featured not only senators and presidents, but also actors, models, and cultural figures. Critics were divided. Some thought it trivialized politics, while others praised it for breaking boundaries. But it proved one thing. John F. Kennedy Jr. wasn't afraid to innovate. He wanted to reimagine how Americans engaged with leadership and culture. Yet despite his professional ambitions, John's personal life often made bigger headlines. The media followed his romances closely, linking him to Hollywood stars like Daryl Hannah and Madonna before he settled down. In 1996, John married Carolyn Bessette, a fashion publicist with Calvin Klein. Their wedding was a secretive, intimate affair on a secluded island in Georgia. When the photos finally surfaced, the couple instantly became cultural icons. Carolyn's minimalist silk gown set new standards in fashion, while the couple's glamorous New York lifestyle captivated the press. To the outside world, they were the embodiment of 1990s elegance, young, beautiful, stylish, and very much in love. But behind the fairy tale, life wasn't always easy. Friends reported tension between John, who longed for privacy, and the relentless media that chased him everywhere. Carolyn, unaccustomed to that level of scrutiny, struggled under the weight of constant attention. Still, together, they represented the modern face of the Kennedy dynasty. Throughout his life, John was often compared to his father. People wondered if he would one day enter politics, perhaps even run for office. But John himself once joked, "I am not running for anything except my life." He understood the expectations, but he was determined to live on his own terms. Then came tragedy. On July 16, 1999, John, Carolyn, and her sister, Lauren Bessette, boarded a small Piper Saratoga plane John was piloting. Their destination was Martha's Vineyard for a family wedding. But just a few miles from their destination, the plane went down in the Atlantic Ocean. For 5 days, the nation watched in agony as rescue crews searched. Eventually, divers recovered the wreckage, confirming the worst. All 3 had perished. John F. Kennedy Jr. was just 38 years old. The nation was devastated. Newspapers around the world ran headlines mourning the death of a man many called America's Prince. His funeral was attended by political leaders, celebrities, and family members, all mourning the loss of a figure who embodied so much promise. The tragedy also revived talk of the so-called Kennedy curse, the idea that the family's extraordinary success has always been shadowed by extraordinary loss. From the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, to the deaths of Kathleen Kennedy and David Kennedy, and finally to John Jr., the family's story has often seemed touched by fate. And yet, John's legacy is not just one of tragedy. He is remembered for his warmth, his humility, and his ability to connect with people far beyond politics. Those who knew him best describe him as genuine, funny, and unpretentious, someone who could charm a crowded room, but also put anyone at ease in private conversation. More than 2 decades later, John F. Kennedy Jr. remains a symbol of what could have been, a man who carried his family's history, but also sought to build his own. His magazine, George, was ahead of its time, blending politics and pop culture in a way that would later dominate media. His marriage to Carolyn continues to be remembered as a cultural touchstone of the 1990s style, and his death remains one of those moments where the world seemed to stand still. Today, we remember John not just as the son of a president, but as a man who tried to live authentically under impossible pressure. His life is a reminder of both the brilliance of the Kennedy legacy and the fragility of human promise. John F. Kennedy Jr. may be gone, but his story lives on as one of America's most poignant what-ifs.